Welcome back everyone. Today we're replacing the leaf springs on my Ram 3500. Now leaf springs don't typically go bad that often, but when you got a truck like mine with nearly 300,000 miles on it, you may run into some issues. Usually you'll notice some kind of noise and you look at it and you might have a cracked leaf or something like that. In my case, it cracked along the bushing, and when you jacked it up, it completely separated in half, causing an awful clunking noise when you go over bumps on the road. So while we're replacing the leaf, we're also going to do the shackles. I picked up this real nice adjustable set from Thuren Fabrication. These things are a work of art. Beautiful welds, real stout, and it's going to replace this shackle right here, and you can see the difference. Well, let's flip it the right way. Now the nice thing about these is they're adjustable. 3 different heights stock, a 3/4 inch lift, and a 1 3/4 inch lift. So not only is this an upgrade in quality, but it also provides adjustability in the future if you ever were to lift your truck. So really this isn't too complicated of a project. We have this one bolt here in the front of the truck. You've got these bolts holding the leaf springs together into the axle, and then in the back here you're going to have the shackle, which since we're removing, we're just going to take the top bolt out and take the whole thing out in one piece. Now this rear one does get a little tricky because of all the rust I have on it. So once you have the truck jacked up and you remove the wheel, we're going to start with the 4 nuts on top of these U-bolts holding it to the axle. Penetrating oil is a big help, and the impact wrench doesn't hurt either. Remember, these nuts and bolts have been exposed to everything the truck has over the last 300,000 miles, so they're no treat to take off. Just like that, U-bolts are off and the axle is no longer attached to the leaf springs. Then we drop the jack just a little bit to take the tension off the leaf springs, but still support it so it's easy to take those bolts off. Now this upper shackle bolt's a little tricky. Not only is the tailpipe in the way for turning this wrench, but the nuts has one of those welded tabs on it to stop it from spinning. Naturally that's completely rusted, so you actually have to get an open-ended wrench up there to stop it, and it's a tricky spot. But eventually you get it, you see what I'm talking about. That thing's just all bent up and rusted. And then onto the easier one, the front bolt. This one's pretty straightforward, but it does help to have an extra person to hang on to the other wrench. This is where having a friend really comes in handy. You got to try to wiggle this thing out from underneath, but it's completely disconnected. That's pretty much it. There's not much holding this thing on. With the exception of fighting the rust, this is a pretty easy project. Now for most vehicles, this disassembly ends there. You just put the new leaf springs in. But for my 3500, it has upper overload springs, which I need to transfer from the old leaf springs to the new leaf springs. So first you oil them up real good, and then promptly break off the bolt.
That's one way to do it.
So now that we've broken both of those bolts, we're going to take these off and get the new leaf springs ready to accommodate them. So the bolts in the new leaf springs are not long enough to accommodate the overload springs, so we loosen those nuts, tap those out, and we got longer grade 8 hardware to replace them. This is not the place to cheap out on hardware. So with the longer bolts in, we put the spacer, and then we start putting the overload springs on. Then we got the shackle on the end, so we can put it up all in one place. We just put this in loosely so we can get it torqued down once it's installed. Now that everything's assembled and ready to go, we're just going to lift it up into the truck. Again, having a friend on this one definitely helps. These things are heavy and awkward. Now with the new hardware, we put the bolt in and we realized we have to hold a nut up in that little slot there, which wasn't an easy task. Then we use the floor jack with a 2x4 to help position the leaf spring to line them up with the holes. I never recommend using a 2x4 on a floor jack like this, but this isn't holding any weight, it's really just positioning the leaf spring. So the axle has these cavities where the heads of those bolts sit in, so you want to make sure those are cleaned out and that they line up properly when you drop it onto the axle. So you want to begin jacking up the axle, trying to get it positioned just right. You may have to wiggle things or pull the axle one way or the other, but what you're looking for is this sound.
There it is.
So now that everything's sitting in the right place, we're just going to go around and torque everything up.
Oh yeah. There you go. There it is. Jeez.
And that's it. We're done. New leaf springs are on, the Thuren shackle's installed, and we're back on the road. Thanks everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this, you want to see more, please hit the like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.